Hello, I'm Box Bandy. For those who don't know me that are new here today, I share my life story, the good, the bad, and the ugly, on my channel. I discuss how I am able to live in joy and happiness despite the seemingly unsurmountable difficulties I have faced throughout my life. I share how I lived in a car, then a cargo trailer, and then a box van, and now in the fifth wheel as a disabled senior citizen on a very limited budget. I show how I do things, where I go, how I've overcome so many things, and I think you would find value in watching my other videos on my channel. So a little background. I've been on YouTube for a little over 3 years, and I've been a full-time nomad for a little over 6 years. And now I'm unable to travel as much. So I share a lot of things from this fifth wheel, but I also get out camping and traveling short distances so I can still share those things. I try to give you value for your time by sharing things I think you will be interested in. My prayer in creating my channel was to inspire people to know that no matter where they've come from, no matter what they're facing now, they can succeed and be happy. I share my love of God, my love of country, love of my neighbor, and love of life on my channel. It shares subjects of health, how to do things, how to build things, how to make things work in a small space, even when you have very little. So hope you'll be inspired. Today's video is part 2 of a series on thyroid, battling thyroid disease. I've been battling this for a long time. I have had a lot of obstacles, but I'll share how I found out I had thyroid disease and the things that had to happen to me in discovery. In part 1 of my battling with thyroid disease, I shared what is thyroid disease, and you want to go check out the link up there to see what I had to say about that. In order to keep Of course, I'm stumbling. In order to keep this video fairly short, I won't go through all the background of the different health problems I've had over the years. If you want to know about those things, check out some of my videos on my health issues like fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, arthritis, and different things I faced over the years. But today I'll share with you how I got sick and what I had to go through to get diagnosed with thyroid disease. So in 2016, I was having a lot of problems in my marriage, and I was starting to feel bad physically and had really bad PTSD. And so anyhow, I was seeing a doctor for all my other health issues. And when I went, just before I left my husband, I'd gone to the doctor and they had done lab tests. And when they did the lab test, they told me I should keep an eye on my thyroid and have it tested again in about 6 months to a year. I never thought about it because they never said what's wrong, so I never even thought about it. Then I left my husband. I moved into my car. I went to the first RTR in January of 2017. At the RTR, I made a few friends, which I've contacted later on a few times, but I never really got close to anybody. So I just was camping around Courtside Parker, Lake Havasu, and places like that, moving every 2 weeks. Was very physical living in a car. I was getting tired and very weak. and I was getting lightheaded quite often. In the winds and the heat in the desert, it gets pretty warm by mid-April usually. This year was a little bit different, anyhow. But the heat was killing me because I was very dehydrated. And I thought that was probably the problem. And so I decided I wanted to get out of the heat and go up to Washington to visit my family. All my family live in Washington. I have three sisters and a brother at that time. My brother recently passed, but anyhow, so I decided to go up to Washington. And I also met a friend at the RTR. I wanted to visit her um, on the way to see my sister. So I stopped in California and I bought a cargo trailer because I knew physically I could not keep living in the car. This about was about 6 months, maybe a little longer, into my journey. So I bought the cargo trailer and I stopped at my ex-husband's house, which I still had contact with him. He was an alcoholic, very bad, and I couldn't stay there very long, so I was there a few weeks. And while I was there, I was able to start building out the cargo trailer. So once I got a couple solar panels on there, put a cot in there, and a folding table and a few things that I needed, I popped the trailer onto the car and I headed to Washington. So I stopped and visited my friend Jan in Washington on the way up. Then I headed to my sister's house in Bremerton near Tacoma. That's when it really got worse and worse and worse. I was at my sister's house for less than a month, and I said, man, I couldn't understand it. I could barely move around hardly. I couldn't eat. I couldn't think. I couldn't sleep. My head was all messed up. My heart was beating like 10 miles an hour. I felt like I was losing control of everything. I was very, very sick. So I decided I needed to get moving. I needed to go see my baby sister over in Ritzville, Eastern Washington. So I proceeded to leave and go to her house. When I got there, things got bad. So when I got to my baby sister's house, I parked out front in their parking area for visitors. They had a nice house with a big backyard and a garage, so we were able to put together kitchen for the cargo trailer. And my brother-in-law helped me do that. But I was getting sick. I was getting weak. I could hardly stand up. And I didn't realize what was going on with me. I had no appetite. I was having a very hard time eating. I was losing tons of weight. Now I already was pretty small and I kept losing weight. So one night I let little Dolly out to go pee. And I didn't put her on the leash like I normally did. She wanted to go into the house to my sister's house. So she got up on the porch and she would not come when I called her. She wanted to get inside. It was late at night. Everybody was already asleep. It was well after 11 or 12 o'clock at night. So I had to get out of the cargo trailer to go get her. So as I getting out of the cargo trailer, I noticed I was a little like lightheaded, and I didn't know if I could keep walking, but I did get to the porch, to the steps on the porch, and then I got Dolly to come to the steps, and as I was getting ready to bend over and pick her up, I got very dizzy, and I lost it. I lost consciousness. I passed out and I fell backward and hit the concrete sidewalk. When I came to, Dolly was jumping around and yapping and jumping on my chest, and I thought I didn't even know what happened. So I was hollering for help, but nobody could hear me because they were inside sound asleep. So I finally had to pull myself together enough to crawl over to the steps. I crawled up on my steps and onto the porch. I dragged myself like a military crawl, and I finally got up there, and Dolly stayed right by my side all the way. I was trying to get the screen door open. I didn't even have energy to open the screen door. I finally managed to get it open enough to reach in and pound on the door, and it was pounding quite a while. Finally, somebody came to the door. My sister and my brother in law got me inside. They checked my head, and sure enough, it was cracked and bleeding. And they stayed up with me. My sister stayed up with me through the night to make sure I didn't have a serious concussion. She didn't want me to go to sleep right away. So in the morning, we decided we had to go to Spokane, Washington. I had Kaiser insurance, and I went to the Kaiser in Spokane. When I got there, they did the blood test, and sure enough, it was my thyroid. They said my thyroid was so elevated, I had to get to my regular doctor right away. It was like an emergency. They couldn't take care of things there in Spokane or up in Washington because my Kaiser would not work in Washington, only for the emergency visit, no follow up. So that's why I had to get back to California. Of course, I decided I had to go see my brother before I left. So that's what I did. I went to my brother's house instead of going straight back to California. So by this time it was late August. Um, and I got to my brother's house in Pasco, Washington. That's a Tri-Cities Central, Washington. I couldn't hardly move. I was, I could walk like 2 feet and it's to have to stop. I thought I was gonna fall. My my equilibrium was really bad. Had really hard time breathing. All those symptoms came pounding on me even worse than before. I had the very bad anxiety, heart palpitations. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. My restless leg syndrome, where my legs bounce all the time, was happening constantly. They had the muscle spasms and cramps, and I was just getting sicker and sicker and sicker. I stayed for less than 3 weeks, and I told my brother, I said, I gotta go. If I don't get out of here today, I will never make it back to California. That's where my Kaiser was. So I left Pasco and started heading to California. I drove a lot of hours because I was in a hurry. I was too weak. I was lightheaded often. I shouldn't have even been on the road. Finally, I got to a place in, I believe, Shasta or Klamath Falls. I found a national park camping area where it was just $5 to stay. So I pulled in there. I managed to get the trailer backed into the spot, and I could barely move. I couldn't think. I was ready to pass out. Got out of the car, had to hold on to the trailer to get to the door. And I managed to get the door unlocked and open up. And as I was climbing in the trailer, I leaned forward and I hit the bed, and that was the end of it. I'm sure I slept for at least 14 to 16 hours, never even closed the door. I didn't even know if Dolly made it in. I didn't know if I locked the car or anything. So finally, about, I don't know, probably 14 to 16 hours, I woke up to Dolly yapping and crying and letting me know she was there. I'm sure she needed to go out because didn't go out of the trailer. She stayed there. And I was wondering how she could have kept from taking off. I'm lucky she didn't. I'm lucky she survived because the national forest does have a lot of animals, and who knows who could have broke in, not break in, just walk in and do anything they wanted to, rip me off or whatever. But I was blessed because my Heavenly Father was there for me. So I finally got back on the road and I made it the rest of the way to California to my ex husband's house. And I told him I had to get to the doctor. So he got me to the doctor. And so when I went to see the doctor, she said, "Your thyroid is out of control." She gave me three options. So I will discuss those things on the next video of this series, part 3. And I'll tell you what happened and continue telling you what is going on with me. So, anyhow, that's kind of the story of getting diagnosed. Um, she did diagnose me with the hyperthyroid, and it was pretty severe. So, thank you for watching. Hope you watch the rest of the series. And if you want to know more about my channel, go watch some of my videos. I have a playlist on disabilities, so that would be a good place to start. Or check out my series on um, my life. So thank you. Good night.